Hi folks, Bob Collins for Diver Supply. I've had a number of folks send me notes and comments and say, hey, would you mind making a video about equipment assembly? I'm getting ready to go on a trip and I don't exactly remember how to put my gear together. So what I've done, this is a 63 that I grabbed out of the back, and I've also got what would be a basic rental BC. In essence, this is going to be a basic assembly video, and at the end I'll do a disassembly. Now, what are my qualifications to do this? I've got my dive card when I first started diving in 1970. To give you some understanding of my bona fides, I'm an SDI instructor, trainer, course director, trainer, ambassador, and also I'm a NAUI course director, trainer. I've been a PADI IDC staff instructor, a NASI master instructor, trying to remember all the different ones, SSI master instructor. I've got a fair knowledge on equipment assembly. This is, again, a very basic equipment assembly. This is not pre-dive safety checks. From my experience, I've seen instructors out there that tend to teach parts of pre-dive safety checks into basic assembly. I don't tend to do that. I see instructors do equipment assembly with weights already in the BCs. I don't do that. Things along those lines. But I'm going to run through, again, just a very basic equipment assembly and take it for what it is. And if it helps you, that's great. And if it's below you, then just don't watch it. Again, this is our 63. Whenever you go in to rent a tank, if you don't own your own tanks, then there's a few things that you want to make sure are good. You want to make sure on the shoulder, and again, in a scuba tank, we've got the body of the tank, the shoulder of the tank, the neck of the tank, and of course we've got the valve up here, and that's a dust cover on the valve, and that's a boot down here on the bottom of the tank. They stamp information into the shoulder about the tank's manufacturer, and the most current hydro date is stamped here. And of course that date needs to be within 5 years. So when you look at your tank, when you pick one up, make sure you're checking that, because if it's not current and you take it, maybe you dive, but it's filled right now, but maybe you take it, you dive with it, you go to get it filled someplace other than where you rented it. If it's not current, they're not going to fill it for you. So make sure that that hydro date is good. Now, in addition, we're going to look down here, and what we're looking for is we're looking for the visual inspection program sticker. And this visual inspection program sticker is good for 1 year, and should have a month and a year on there. And normally it's punched on the year that it's done, and it's good for that. Like if it's December of 22, it's good to December of 23 as a standard operating procedure. Now, I have a kind of a specific way that I teach equipment assembly, and I call it the rule of lefts. And what do I mean by that? When I start with my tank and I get ready to do my assembly, I want the opening of the valve where the air comes out, I want that pointed to my left. And of course, the knob, again, if it's a standard scuba tank and you haven't gotten a valve that's the opposite, maybe one was swapped in or out of on a set of doubles, then this knob is going to be pointing away from you and the opening is going to be pointed to the left. So what I want to do is I want to look in here in that little opening, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a good O-ring in there. And these O-rings can be many different colors. But I want to make sure there's a good O-ring in there. It's not damaged, it's not frayed. If it is, especially if you're renting a tank, just ask whoever you're picking it up from, hey, could you swap out that O-ring? And they should be able to do it in just, a matter of seconds. So it shouldn't be a big deal. Now, also, when you go to rent a tank, check those things, but also check the pressure in the tank, all right, before you walk out. Now, if they say, oh, it's okay, it's full. No, grab a gauge, only takes a couple of seconds, put it on there and check the pressure. You don't want to inadvertently get somewhere and somebody has taken the dust cover, and these dust covers tell people that work in the shops, normally, I say normally, that if the dust cover's on, it means the tank, we assume the tank is full. Somebody could inadvertently put a dust cover on a partially used tank or a near empty tank, give it to you thinking it's a full tank. Now, this is a 3,000 PSI tank, and most of these you're going to see probably somewhere between 3,000 and 3,300, something like that, because it does basically allow about a 10% overage. And of course, when they fill these tanks, they get hot. They'll usually fill them up to like 32, 33, something like that. When they cool down, they'll be right at 3,000 or 3,100 or something like that. So dust cover on, double check the O-ring, and we're in good shape with that. Okay, we want to make sure that, of course, there's no dents or dings. Now, this is a well-used tank, and that's fine and dandy. Just because a tank is older doesn't mean it's not useful. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my BCD on first. If you ever forget what goes on first, the regulator or the BC, just remember, what's first in the alphabet? Well, the BC is first in the alphabet. And this is a fairly simplistic BC. It's got a single tank strap. It's got a valve strap on the back. Pretty nice unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and we want the opening of the BC facing the same direction as the opening of the tank. Now, if you're on a dive boat, the tank's going to be in front of you and it's going to be like this, but the opening is still going to be facing in the same direction as the opening of the tank. Now, I'm going to reach back here on the back. I want to take this valve strap and I want to put it under my thumb, but that keeps it out of the way. If I don't do this, once I put it on the tank, I'm going to look down, and what I'm going to end up seeing, I'm going to see this valve strap between the tank and the backpack here, and it's just not the right thing to do. The valve strap helps the tank be a part of the structural integrity of the BC, and it helps it position it too, especially if you own your own BC and you're used to using maybe an 80 cubic foot tank. Then you're gonna basically get this positioned in a certain spot so that when you get ready to mount your BC, it just goes in the right spot for you. Now, I'm gonna come back here. I'm going to unthread my tank strap, and I've told you, and I'm put a video up here about adjusting these tank straps, but I want to make sure the cam is facing forward or toward the BC, and I'm going to loosen this strap because this is a brand new BC right off the shelf over there. I'm going to loosen this up a little bit because I know it's not really going to fit. And again, opening of the BC, opening of the tank, slip it up over the top, start walking it down like what you see. I want to make sure that the plane of the valve opening and the back of the BC are parallel. So I'll turn it into the camera. See how this is parallel right here? You don't want this cattywampus off to one side it just is not going to feel right once you get the regulator and such. Now, before you get down very far, we want to take the valve strap and we'll put the valve strap around the top of the valve. It's not a handle, it's a valve strap. It goes around the valve. And I'm going to start working the tank strap down. I'll turn it so you can see what's going on here. You can see my cam is forward and I've got it worked down. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the top material. If I hold the material up, and this is an estimation, I want the top of the valve to be about level with the top of the material. And if I've got my valve strap adjusted, again, this nice thing about having your own equipment, if I've got my valve strap pretty much adjusted, it's going to hold it in that spot, in that location. Now, I'm going to turn this in the opposite direction because this is where that left-handed, right-handed thing I was just talking to you about as far as the strap. Now, if I own this BC, I'd take the strap out and put it around the other way because I'm a right-handed person. But you'll see what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to thread my strap. And like I said, if this is not tight enough, in that little video I put right up there, it's going to explain what I'm talking about because I don't want my strap being loose. And again, watch the video. So I'm going to hold the tail of the strap. I'm going to hold the tank and I'm going to pull that cam across. Hear that pop? When that popped, that told me that I just tensioned up that strap good and tight. And one of the things I want to make sure is I want to make sure that I'm sealing down Velcro to Velcro on the tank strap. You don't want it hanging out there because if somebody in a wetsuit gets near you and that Velcro grabs onto their wetsuit, it could pop this cam loose and now you've got a tank trying to slide out of your BC. You might be underwater, and of course that's definitely not a good thing. So you saw me with the rule of lefts. This was pointing to my left. My BC was opening, pointing to the left. I control the BC with my left hand as I walk the tank strap down with my right hand. Now, this is going to come back into play when we get ready to do our disassembly. All right, so I've got my unit on. I'm going to give it a little lift. Watch your toes and such when you do this because if the tank slides out, it could break a toe. But give it a little lift to make sure it's not going to be loose. If it is, again, watch that video and it'll show you how to tighten up that cam strap back there. Tank strap, many people call it a cam strap, all right? Now, let's put the regulator on. Nice regulator. This particular regulator has what we call a turret on it, like what you see right there. Not all regulators have that, but what I'm going to do is I want to position, and I'm going to get the gauge on the wearer's left side. In other words, if I'm standing in front of it, I'm still going to put this gauge on the wearer's left side. I also want to put my inflator hose on the left side. So if you're using one of these that's got the turret on it, just turn the turret so that your inflator hose and your gauge are on the left and your regulator second stages, regulator are on the wearer's right side. Again, if you're on a dive boat, you're going to be standing here. If you'll try to hold your regulator directly over the valve, this will make a whole lot more sense for you. I'm going to reach up, and this, of course, is a yoke fitting. In the U.S., yoke fittings are the more apropos that you're going to see out there. Some places, and I'll kind of hold this down, some places they call this an A-clamp, but we call it a yoke fitting. So I'm going to unscrew my yoke. Don't unscrew it to the point it falls out. Just unscrew it so this is nice and open. And what you want to do is you want to look in that little opening. There's a filter in there. And if that filter looks like the bottom of a truck stop toilet, then you don't, because you're going to be breathing through that in a few minutes, okay? You want to make sure it's nice and spotless and clean. If it's not, hand it back to whoever you're renting it from and get them to give you another one that's been serviced and is clean. So I'm going to take my yoke, I'm going to drop it down over the top of my yoke valve, and there's this metal O-ring right here that you see. I'll try to get a close-up of this. That is what fits up and locks up against that O-ring right there. So I'm going to drop it down over my tank valve, get it in place, and the yoke screw has a little point on it, and the back of the valve has got a little dent on it. So what you're looking to do is you're looking for that metal ring and the O-ring to match up, and then when you begin tightening down the yoke knob, use your fingers only, don't put your hand on it. If you'll take this thumb and put it on the yoke right here, in other words, take your left thumb and lay it on the yoke right there and hold it, because you actually want it to be leaning towards your thumb. And the reason why is because if you don't do that, as you snug down the yoke knob, this A-clamp will roll over and it'll start rubbing against that tank valve. And you don't want that. It makes it tough to deal with opening and closing the tank. So just use that thumb, lay it on there, snug down your yoke with your fingers only. Don't put your hand on it. Don't do that. Tight as you can get it, push down tight as you can get it with your fingers. You have to fight the urge to put your hand on it, really crank down on it, because that's not what you're looking for. All right, so we've got our unit on, and again, I'm going to continue with my rules of left. And so I'm going to stay on the wearer's left side, and the first thing I'm going to connect is my low pressure inflator hose. And I want to check this little slip ring right here. And what you may see sometimes in some of the rental equipment out there, you'll see it gets kind of this green corrosion, I call it Goomba, in there. And you want that slip ring to move smoothly up and down. If it doesn't, again, you're paying for it. Give it back to them and get one that works. I'm going to reach over here. And this one is kind of nice because what they've done is they've sewn down the holder for the inflator hose. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take the inflator hose, run it down through that little holder. A lot of these you can just, it's got Velcro on it, you can just pull it loose. And take your inflator, some of them have these cool little covers on them like what you see right there. Uncover that. And you're going to go silver to silver, pull down, push it up on there. And I don't know if you heard that little snap when I pushed it up on there. Once you've got it on there, one hand on the inflator and one hand down here on the hose, give it a good tug to make sure it's connected. I saw a young lady at a quarry have a real issue with that, and it could have been a dangerous situation if I hadn't been able to intervene for her. And some of these have a little toothy holder, and one of the nice things about this Aqualung inflator, it's got a little track on here. I think if you look at some of the Aqualung BC videos I've done, it shows you what I'm talking about. And even right up here at the very top, there's a little holder spot. This particular Aqualung BC comes with a nice braided, which is a little smaller in diameter, that helps go into their inflator hose. So if you happen to buy one of those. I'm going to stay on the left, and I'm going to grab my gauge. This is just a kind of a standard gauge that's out there in the rental shops and stuff. It's got your pressure gauge here, it's got a depth gauge here, and it's got a compass over here on this side. And this is a leash. And, you know, a lot of times we see people out there diving and their gauges are dragging along in the sand as they're going along, or they take them and stick them down in their zipper pocket. It's not the smartest thing to do. So in your Save a Dive kit, I mean, these leashes are like $5. Get one and stick it in your mass box or in your kit so that you've got something that's not going to have you damaging the equipment or damaging the reef. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the gauge, because I don't want to be looking at it. And this thing about pointing it off to the side, I don't really agree with that either. So, you know, there's discussion about plastic gauges. When you open the valve, 3,000 PSI comes up. That's fine and dandy. In 50 years, have I ever seen one absolutely explode? No. Have I seen one fracture? Yes. But what I do is I take this, keep my fingers out from in front of it, and I just put it into the back of the BC like that. So if anything did happen, it wouldn't affect anybody, me or anybody around me. I'm going to take my right hand, I'm going to put it on the tank knob up here. Turn it so you can see that tank knob. And I'm going to gently open the tank, and you're going to see the hoses stiffen up a little bit. Now they've stiffened up. And I'm going to begin opening, 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 open, 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 until the knob finally stops. Now, why do I say open, 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 open? Well, you can open this a little bit, and you can test breathe this, and you can read the pressure on the gauge during assembly. But if you jump in the water and you get down 10, 15, 20 feet and you start breathing off of it, then the first stage is not getting all the air it needs out of the valve. So you need to make sure that the tank valve is all the way open. Kind of like when we descend, we equalize, 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 equalize. Well, when we open a tank valve, we open, 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 open until it finally stops. And of course, there's all this discussion about turning it forward just a little bit, and does that take pressure off the valve threads and the valve itself? Yeah, sure it does. But it's just kind of a good practice, because there are a lot of strong people out there that when they open this, they want to turn it, and it basically can damage the O-rings and such in the valve if you put too much effort into it. So I tend to just take a little pressure off of that. So just roll it forward a smidge. And now I'm going to look at my pressure gauge. And this particular tank has exactly 3,100 PSI. The simplest way I know of to communicate pressure, and of course hand signal if you're underwater and somebody goes like this or like this to you, you know, how much air do you have? And then if I had this 31, I would go 3,000. I'd show them 3,100. I don't do the sideways thing. I don't do this. I don't worry about the 50, that sort of thing. I just do the thousands so you can see it, and the hundreds so it's plain and simple. Just keep it simple, all right? I'm going to take my leash now, and over here on the left side of the BC, you can kind of see this orange D-ring right here. And I'm going to connect my gauge right there, so I'm good. Now, if I want to, I can reach down here, pull my weight pocket out, and lay it down while I'm right here. That just helps me keep things nice and neat. I know I'm going to put the weights in after I assemble. That way, if there's 18 pounds of lead, I'm not trying to pick up a BC with 18 pounds of lead and try to slide it down on the tank. That, to me, is a little bit ridiculous, but some people do it, and some instructors talk about it that way, and that's fine. So now we're done on this side. I'm done on the left. I'm going to move over to the right. I've got my second stage, my alternate, and I've got my primary second. So what Bob does, Bob goes to the most obvious hose first, which is the octo. And some people call this a safe second. Some people call it an octo. It's an alternate air source that you provide to your buddy or to another diver that runs into a breathing or out of air situation or an air emergency of some kind. That you pass on. But I still want to test it. It's part of what I do because I might need it. So I'm going to turn it away from me. And what I want you to see is I'm turning the mouthpiece is level and the vents are pointing down. Do your best not to handle this in an upside down manner. Try not to do that, all right? Bob considers that bad karma, because if you give that to somebody underwater, there could be water still in there when they're trying to breathe off of, and that's not gonna be a good thing. So I'm just gonna turn it away, purge it real quick, turn it around. I'm not gonna flip it over, so I'm holding it upside down. I wanna turn it, look in it to make sure there's no spiders or cockroaches or anything like that in it. Now I'm gonna test breathe it 3 breaths, and what I'm gonna do first, I'm gonna take a big breath, put it in my mouth, and then I'm gonna blow, and then I'm gonna all right, good. So now this particular BC has a octo pocket on it right here. So I'm gonna fold right down here at the bottom of my hose. I'm gonna slide it right in there, and that's gonna give me a nice, easy deployment if I need to. I'm not gonna fold the hose and stick it up underneath here, because this rubber doubled up, stuck in this little bitty D-ring, can hang up in an emergency. And a lot of times people forget, in an emergency, you need things to move smoothly. So I just take this and hold it out there. Now, you notice I used something, I connected it, I used something, connected. Came over here, I used something, I connected it. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing with my primary, turn it away. This is that nice G260. Hit it, turn it, look in it, big breath, blow, breathe, breathe, breathe. 3 good breaths, but big breath first, then put it in your mouth and blow. That way you're not gonna eat that little spider that's hiding in there. All right, and then I could take my weight pocket out of this side, put my weights in it, put my weights back in the left and the right, and pretty much I'm ready to do my dive planning, and I'm ready to do my buddy check. Because remember, the buddy check is so my buddy doesn't mess up my dive and I don't mess up my buddy's dive. And you correct things that were forgotten or whatever by me checking his stuff or her stuff, and they're checking my stuff to make sure I'm ready to rock and roll and get into the water. So I'm gonna cut it right here. I'll make another video about disassembly. Appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost you a penny to do that. And hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for